a lot of people were talking about the debate, like we were talking about the GOAT debate, whatever. I don't care about any debate. Michael Jordan, the only debate you can say is he might not be human. He might be alien. He's like, there's something
That was
he's
a movie, Tate. That was fictional. Space Jam
yeah,
was fictional.
Space Jam might. In fact, until I was like 8 years old, I thought it was a real movie, and I thought it actually had. I thought that's how he came back from baseball. I thought that he beat the Monstars, then he was like, all right, I'm back for the
You
Bulls.
think the Last Dance is the second best documentary about Jordan ever made? Space
Yeah,
Jam is the first
exactly.
best.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, this isn't even bringing up the good stuff. When is he going to talk to Bugs Bunny, man? Let's get to the Last Dance.
Let's get into it. Let's get into the Last Dance. Let's do initial thoughts off the top. I'll start. I'll say I thought the first two episodes, I thought the timeline was all over the place. That was a little confusing at first. Confusing only in like I wasn't really sure what mood I was supposed to be in. Like the part where they're talking about Jordan going against the '86 Celtics, and then they snap their finger and they're like, and yeah, so Pippen was coming back. I was like, wait, he was coming back for the '86. So wait, they lose game two to the Celtics, but Pippen was back for game three. I'm confused. What's going on here? There's a lot of jumping around, which ultimately I did not care about one bit, because you could just have a guy just come on and say like, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to show 10 hours of footage of the 90s Bulls and Michael Jordan walking around with the worst fashion known to man. He's somehow the only fashion icon in the history of the world who has never once been fashionable his entire life, and we're going to highlight that and just show a bunch of footage from the 1990s Bulls. Enjoy. And then they just like they didn't need any narrative, whatever. Just have it jump around and have guys chime in, and it would have been the greatest thing ever. So that's my initial thought, Tate. I loved it, even though the narrative, I not really sure what the hell was going on with all that.
Well, I will say this.
Mhm.
I enjoyed it. I love the first two episodes. I love what we were able to see. The first thing you said, initial thoughts. My first initial thought was, oh my God, Arsenio Hall. I love the Arsenio Hall show. So that was great to see Arsenio Hall. Good to see Jordan be, the superstar of the moment. My favorite little cutaway in the first episode was when they were in Paris, and it's David Stern, and David Stern was very aware who Michael Jordan was. Michael Jordan, for anyone that doesn't know, and I guess they're seeing it now, Michael Jordan is, I would say, if you took like the Teen Wolf version, like a Styles, like of Scott's best friend Styles, which is like the
Mhm.
kind of like, hey, Fonz, like whatever, like guy, I am the jock, I am the loudest in the room. Look at me. That's Michael at some level, and Michael was also the best at basketball. So when
Mhm.
Michael's the best at the basketball, has won 5 championships, and is in Paris, and they say, Michael, what should you wear? He says, a beret.
Mhm.
And David Stern sees that, and he's like, classic Michael wearing a beret in Paris. They ask if he knows any French. He goes, no, not at all, but I'll be
Yeah.
fine. I'll be
Yeah.
good. Don't worry about it. Um, I think that's like what I'm enjoying about the doc is that a lot of people, I think, have turned to Jordan into like, he had no opinions. He was just like this straight laced, like, show up, I'm gonna work hard. Like Michael Jordan is the ultimate. Let's get in somebody's head. Let's talk
Mhm.
about what's gonna happen to you on this basketball court. Let's figure out what your weaknesses are. And he even said in the documentary, he's like, if I don't win, I'm crazy. I'm crazed. I have to figure out what to do about it. And that's why, when I was coming up in North Carolina, everyone's like, instead of where's Waldo, it's like, where's Michael? It's like, where's Michael Jordan? Like, what's Michael Jordan doing? Why isn't Michael Jordan in Chapel Hill? Why isn't Michael Jordan, in Wilmington? Why isn't Michael Jordan do whatever? And then you're like, oh, he has like a motorcycle racing team, and he's just like betting on motorcycle racing. You know what I mean? It's like, this guy has to have something to
He
like
has to
obsess
win
about.
at all
Yeah.
times.
And he
Something to
has to,
win,
and he
yeah.
has something to talk about. It's something to do. And that's like, paying guys at United Airline guys to put your bag out first, and then making bets with Scottie Pippen $50 that you're going to get
Mhm.
your bag first, and taking money from Scottie Pippen. Like, he is just like one of those people, and I don't even think we even got into, like, right now I feel like everything is very surface level with The Last
Mhm.
Dance. So I'm hoping that we get to some plane, like we're on the plane where they're playing Blue Boo-ray and all this other stuff. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably what happened. Is I think the first two episodes were just setting the stage for the actual story,
Like,
because it
this
was
is who we
jumping
are.
around a lot. But
Yeah.
it's called The Last Dance because this is the last season that this team was all together and all that. And I thought that was going to be um kind of the overarching point, and then it was like jumping all over the place, which was, again, it was totally fine by me. Yeah, the real content I want though, Tate, speaking of Jordan wanting to win, like what is he doing during quarantine? Just imagine what that guy like having nothing to really like. How is he betting? How is he trying to? What is he trying to win right now? What does that look like? Michael Jordan in quarantine, not being able to go to the horse tracks, not being able to to play cards with his friends, not being able to go golfing. Like,
He's
what is he doing?
he's trying to win ratings. So right
Yeah,
now he's
right.
playing the game of ratings, and he's like, "I'm going to have the biggest ESPN documentary of all time." I have to say this as an aside, and we can get back into it. The promotion around it on Twitter. I know you're on and off on Twitter, but like the like suggested copy gets sent out to all the people, and then they all like tweet the same thing. It's like if you're not watching hashtag The Last
Yeah,
Dance,
yeah.
you're like you're missing out, you know. But then it's like the exact same copy like 15 straight times, and I'm like, you know, this is a big documentary. This is a big, moment with Michael Jordan, all that sort of stuff. But we all know Michael Jordan. It's just like it's nice to get reminded again, I guess. I don't know. It seems like people have been shocked. I've seen people tweet things like, I had no idea. I was like, what?
Well, I think the no idea part for me came from all the other stuff that I remember the 98 season being Jordan's last probably. I remember like thinking that cuz I remember like even when Jordan hits the shot over Brian Russell, Bob Costas his call was like if that's the last we see of Michael Jordan, what like he kind of put that tag on it. It wasn't just like Jordan hits the big shot, the Bulls take the whatever. It was like he says it and then he has the wherewithal to be like that might be the last we ever see of Michael Jordan because this is something that people knew like kind of all year was lingering. But I thought that the reason this was the last team was because Jordan decided he was just going to hang it up. I thought he decided I had the three-peat. I'm going to come back get another three-peat and I'm out. So to watch to see footage of Jerry Krause be like Phil could go 82-0 and I'm firing his ass. I don't care. And then having all the stuff with the Scottie Pippen contract and all that. I think that was stuff that was new to me because I was old enough to remember all this stuff. Like I wasn't obviously an adult who was like, pouring over contracts and CBAs and all that stuff like people do in sports media now. But I was 11 years old and I vividly remember watching the Bulls throughout the 90s. And I remembered it being the last year and I had no idea that they hated Jerry Krause that much. And I had no idea that Phil
Mhm.
Jackson was 100% gone after that season. I had no idea that Scottie Pippen basically hated management. And I don't know if that's because I was so young or if it's because like media just worked differently then where like you like that sort of stuff wasn't as like when you turned on Sports Center they just showed mostly highlights. It wasn't like they weren't like pouring over the nuances of of front office dealings and all that kind of stuff back then. It was probably just some combination of both. But yeah, I found that fascinating. Just how outwardly everyone hated Jerry Krause and how Reinsdorf weirdly enough, like Reinsdorf might be the bigger snake than Krause because Reinsdorf, who owns the freaking team, who brought Jerry Krause on, like who he hires Jerry Krause because Jerry Krause is basically like, you're gonna hire me. And he's like, okay, I guess so. Um, throughout those entire first two episodes, he shrugged his shoulders like, yeah, can you believe this guy, Jerry Krause? What an idiot. It's like, bro, you had more power than anyone else. And you're just trying to absolve yourself of all of this blame for blowing up this dynasty. I don't understand it. Reinsdorf was weirdly enough, Reinsdorf was like a bigger weasel to me than Krause ever was because he was acting like he was just like a Bulls fan. He was along for the ride. He was the owner of the freaking team.
Yeah, he played it like he was an innocent bystander that was like, I can't believe this is happening. I don't. Oh my goodness. Oh shucks. What can I do about this? But he was
Yeah.
obviously there for the whole thing. And I think like what you were talking about, the coverage of the Bulls at the time was very. The local coverage probably said, "Hey, Jerry Krause and Tim Floyd are going fishing." In Chicago on
Hmm.
WGN or whatever they're watching, you probably saw that. But on ESPN or ABC or NBC, whatever it may
Or
be,
Fox Sports One.
or Fox Sports, whatever, whoever had NBA games back
Fox
then.
Sports One back in
Yeah,
1998.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember that. I remember uh, that like grouping of time and those conversations were all about, of course, like Michael Jordan himself. And I think I'm a little, I'm 6 years old at this time, so I'm not aware of any of this stuff. All I know is that I knew Dean Smith. I remember Dean Smith retiring. I remember like the press conference, watching it, him being gone, and then Jordan was like right after that. So it was
Mhm.
basically I missed everything that was good. So everyone, all my cousins, everyone older than me, were like everything is bad, everything is over. But there was no idea about the Krause part, and even me who like has gone back and read all about the Jordan stuff over all these years. Jerry Krause is such a he's just the villain. You know what I mean? He's not even
Mhm.
like you don't even really think about him. You know what I mean? Because he's just like he is the looming force of like Jordan's trying to do all these from the vantage point that I'm reading, which is like fan fiction at this point as a little kid. And it's like, oh well, there's the management who they wanted to trade Charles Oakley, but then Jordan made it work with Bill Cartwright, and then they bring this guy in Scottie, and they wanted to tank, and Jordan didn't want to tank, and they go to the 86 as the 8 seed, and then he scores 63 points, and he proves himself against his team, and that actually is better for business than tanking. Because the funniest part is like the whole thing, everyone's like, man, this is all we're learning about the business of basketball. Scottie teaches about the business of basketball and all this sort of stuff, and it's like Jerry Krause and Michael Jordan both were talking about the business of basketball, but they were just talking from two different beliefs on what the business of basketball
Right.
could be. And one of those beliefs is like, if I play great basketball and win, then they will come. The other version is I have to build the infrastructure, do
Mhm.
whatever it takes to build that infrastructure, and then we will win once that infrastructure is built, which we see the NBA split in that right now. And Michael Jordan was just so good that they could coexist. Like
Yeah.
that's just pretty much all it is.
It makes sense to me that Krause was villainized so badly because again,
Yeah.
the title of this thing is The Last Dance, and he's kind of the driving force behind why this was the last dance, and he's kind of the guy that is blowing this all up because he wants to do the
Yeah.
rebuild, all that kind of stuff. But it is weird that like I mean, we should probably acknowledge that he drafted Scottie Pippen. He traded up to get Pippen. He like saw Pippen was great. He got Horace Grant in there. I don't know. That was weird to me that like
I mean, Bill Cartwright was a great trade. I mean, Oakley was a
yeah,
great person for Jordan to have, but
like
Bill Cartwright was probably
he
better.
put the team together, and I'm not saying we should. I'm not offering my opinion on things because I obviously wasn't there. What I'm saying is it's fascinating that the guys that are talking about him, no one seems to like MJ doesn't seem to be like, listen, Jerry can kiss my ass for how he blew up the team, but I do have to give him credit for getting us to that point. Like no one, there's none of that. No one is willing to be like, he did a lot of great things to get us there. It seems like basically everyone's like, screw that guy. I hate him. He's short. Like they're just openly mocking how short he is and fat
Well,
he is. And
I mean,
it
basically,
was wild.
it's the villain in Space Jam. It's the man
Yeah.
that's going to take him to Moron Mountain and all that sort of stuff. And then also, I mean, in 2009 at the Hall of Fame when Jordan did his 20-minute speech and everyone thought it was very arrogant. I mean, he genuinely did not know Jerry Krause was going to be there.
Yeah.
So he says in his speech, he's like, and I don't know who invited Jerry Krause. But no, he literally said that in the speech because I remember that was like a big thing because he was like actually upset, and that rift is real because
Mhm.
like players and you're a basketball player, you understand it's like
Thank you, Tate.
you have a window of time. You have a window of time.
Right.
You can't like yes, in a vacuum, tanking and all sort of stuff makes sense if Ben Simmons is going to be
Mhm.
99 for 5 years and guarantee that's going to be, but that's not a guarantee. So when you're a player and you're coming off an injury and you just went back to North Carolina and you got your leg completely healthy and you've been playing basketball and you're ready to go, and they're like, sit out, you can't play, and your whole life everyone's saying even if you have a broken foot you better play, and we revere guys like Isaiah Thomas who breaks his ankle and
Yeah.
continues to play. You know
Right.
what I mean? You can't like that wiring doesn't and Jerry Krause is ahead of his time in that sense. He was trying to tank, but at the same time you get both
Well,
sides of the equation.
it's interesting you brought up earlier that the business of basketball is the phrase you used, because
Yeah.
I think that what's going to happen, and it's already happening, is this is good. This has become like a Jordan versus LeBron thing, and if not Jordan versus LeBron, it's become a that era of basketball versus the current era of basketball.
Mhm.
And if that's what the discussions are going to be, I guess like the interesting thing to me is like the business of this idea of the business of basketball. It's no secret that like NBA players now are very in tune with the business of basketball in the sense that they are aware of their brands. They're very brand conscious. Um they're aware of their fashion choices. Like they're aware of their social media personas, like all this stuff that goes into it. And it feels like a lot of them, if not all of them, are trying to emulate Michael Jordan. In that
Mhm.
this is a guy who, as great of a player as he was, weirdly enough, I feel like his brand and his celebrity has eclipsed anything he did on a basketball court. He's the greatest basketball player of all time. But like he's got the most famous shoe of all time now. He's got his just persona around him. Um, the footage of him going to France, like people knew him as a basketball player, but I doubt those French people were like following his career and they were like, oh my god, Mike, I remember what you did against the Knicks in the playoffs. Like they weren't that. They were like, that's the famous guy. They're like
Mhm.
he's just a celebrity. They're losing their minds because he's a celebrity. And to that point, it feels like the current NBA players are trying to tap into that magic and they're trying to follow that model. And what seems to be missing, and not to go all old head because like I'm honestly like the same age as a lot of the NBA players, but what seems to be missing in the equation is that Michael Jordan always put the basketball first. He was always putting the winning first. The business part of it came as a result of his approach to the game part of it. And then the business came. You know what I'm saying? Like he saw like I put me in the game. I don't care if my foot's broken. Like I want to win this game. And then because that was his attitude, because he had success with that, all of the business came after that. And I feel like the players, the NBA players today, and everyone will think you're talking about LeBron because if you say NBA players today, it always means LeBron. I don't necessarily mean LeBron. I mean just your general NBA player. They want that same sort of like idea of being a having your own shoe line and just kind of being like a celebrity, but also a basketball player, and following in Jordan's footsteps. But what so many of them seem to be missing is like the basketball always has to come first. If you want to be the Jordan, if you want to be revered like Jordan was, you have to make basketball your number one, your number two, your number three. Winning has to become everything to you. Then and only then can the rest come. And I think like Kobe had that mindset. And yeah, it's like old, I'm kind of hitting the same points that like all these older these blue hairs all over TV, the talking heads all over TV hit that Jordan and Kobe were cut from that cloth, but not a lot of guys are. I just find that fascinating because even as the business and the celebrity and everyone remembers the '90s Bulls, you're watching this footage of Jordan, and so far we're not seeing him talking about like his shoe line. We're not seeing him talk about how it's awesome to be in France because this is tapping into a new market and now I could make X amount of dollars from this and I know he said Republicans buy sneakers too and I'm not saying he was one way or the other but just in general Michael Jordan's mindset was I want to win basketball games and the business stuff was born out of that. It wasn't like a let's do both at the same time, which seems to be the approach of a lot of NBA guys now.
Michael Jordan had a clause in his contract for the love of the game, and he was allowed to play basketball whenever he wanted to because of that clause in his contract. And you talked about a current version. Every player wants to build a brand like MJ, and they want to have all these things outside of basketball, and they need to put basketball first. The real difference is, and this is just the fact of life. And I think Bobby Knight, you and I would both love it because this is what he would say to any player that you may see: is that if you're thinking in your head, I have to put basketball first, you will never be Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Never. You have no shot. You have absolutely no shot because the only way to be Michael Jordan is to have all the physical tools that are in place, like he is a 6'6" athletic specimen, unlike anything we've seen. A man that could fly and float because he was from a place where flight was born, not Ohio. And
How dare you?
how dare you? But like Michael Jordan, right? Like that like is it all comes together and works. And Bob Knight said that. He was like, that's why he was the best player he had ever seen, in '84, he's at the LA Olympics. He was like,
Bob
he
Knight said that before he played a second of professional basketball.
and after here it is, Mark Titus. Bob Knight said that after Dan Dockage and Steve Alford as a freshman beat Michael Jordan, the best version of Michael. They beat them in the Sweet 16, and then 2 months later, Michael Jordan goes and is doing the Olympic training. It wasn't that great to start in practice, and then by the end of it, that's what Bob Knight is saying. And Bob Knight doesn't mince words, so Bob Knight thinks that, which means he has the drive plus all the physical tools that you're talking about. And it's why people are like, how can Joe Ingles be great in the NBA? It's like, well, he loves basketball, he understands the game of basketball, and then he also works hard to be a great defender. Then you map it out from there. There's like the initial steps to get to it. But beyond all that, Michael Jordan was a genius businessman. He wore a suit whenever he was doing any sort of press conference. He knew what he was doing at some level, but he also knew that to be at that level, you had to win and you had to be great and you had to have those big moments on a big stage against the 1986 Celtics, where poor Rick Carlisle is getting made fun of, and Danny Ainge is all these guys, and Larry Bird said he's God disguised as Michael Jordan, and like that stage means more to your business and your brand than not playing, tanking, getting a better player, and then winning 2 more titles. Because that's how the psyche of fans work. It's weird how that works. It's why Derrick Rose is still one of the most beloved players in the NBA. It's because everyone wants to be on that journey. And if you quote unquote skip the journey, people are,
Yeah. If you yeah, you brought up Larry Bird calling him God disguised as Michael Jordan. That was what, Jordan's second year in the league? third year, fourth year. Like he was
it'd be his
was it
third year.
third
So
year?
80,
Third year, yeah.
yeah.
86, yeah.
Or 84,
Second
85,
year
85, 86 of second.
is
Yeah.
his second year. His
Yeah.
second year in the league.
Yep.
That's insane, dude. Bob Knight's calling him the greatest player he's ever seen before he's played a second professional basketball. He's 2 years into the league, and Larry Bird's calling him God. Larry Bird is calling him God. It'd be one thing if, like, yeah, some end of the bench guy on the Kings was like, yeah, Michael Jordan is God, but
Mhm.
it's Larry freaking Bird is calling him God. I did enjoy that part that there seems to be this narrative around Jordan that that everyone loves telling the story about how he was cut from his high school team, and his work ethic is legendary and all that kind of stuff. That you could convince that there are probably people who believe that Michael Jordan was as good as he was because he just worked harder than everyone else, and that's definitely a lot of it. But at the same time, I did enjoy that. Like Roy comes on and he's like, yeah, when he came to North Carolina for camp, we kind of knew who he was, but by the time he left, we thought that's the best player in the country. And Bob Knight saying before he even plays professional basketball, that's the best player that's ever lived. And Larry Bird's like, this man is God. Before he ever even won a playoff series. I enjoy that because it speaks to like he really did play very hard, but like the man was just a great basketball player from the start. And I don't know. I don't know why I enjoy that so, but I don't like this idea that he just worked really hard. Not to take away from his work ethic, but it's just been very misleading and kind of it's kind of easy to forget how good he was like the moment he stepped into the NBA because I don't know. It just feels like the story around Jordan was always like he was good but not great, and then he just worked really really hard. And in 1991, everything clicked, and he finally won an NBA championship. And I was like, no, this dude when he was in high school goes to North Carolina, and Roy Williams is like, that's the best player in the country.
And if you look at it, like the story of Michael Jordan getting cut from his team in 10th grade, Michael Jordan was 5'10". He lost out to a guy that was 6'7", Leroy Smith. So a guy
Yeah,
that's 6'7" is who beats him out. He's this much of a maniac in his mind that he goes home that summer. He's crying and all upset, and he's working out on his basketball skills. His mom, Dolores, who is lovely, love seeing her in the doc, she's putting salt in his shoes every single day. The kid grows 5 inches. He ends up being 6'3" going into his junior year. Makes the team, obviously, ends up being one of the best players on the team, which
hmm
is that's a freak accident, right? That's some like otherworldly stuff that happens. He then has Roy Williams go on a whim to go watch him play, decides to take him to 5-star basketball camp where all the best players in the world are and are in USA. I mean, I guess like the
no,
the,
it's
the
the
best,
world. No,
yeah, in the world.
yeah, that would be the world.
We'll say the world. Yeah, exactly. So Michael Jordan goes to 5-star camp and he learns all these fundamentals and he's just otherworldly, as Roy Williams said. And Roy Williams said the best quote I've heard him say about Michael Jordan, which is, look, that freaking sucker, he's the only person that I know that can turn it on and off, and he never freaking turned it off.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and then when he said that, you're
Not
just
sure
like,
it makes a
that's
ton of sense, but that's okay. It sounded really awesome.
well, it's like I guess Michael has never turned it off, and I think that's
Yeah,
kind of what the like the I guess the mantra of the whole doc is that to be the best, you have to
yeah,
constantly want to be the best,
yeah.
like Kobe was. Yeah.
How do you? I will say though, if we're being fair, there's a little bit of survivorship bias with the Jordan story, and really every story from that era, from Jordan's era. Of I especially love all the stories where it's like, yeah, we were playing in Atlanta, in '87, and Jordan turns to Dominique and says, "I'm going off tonight," and then I swear to God, he goes out and he scores 52. And you're like, okay, that's cool. But I guarantee there was a time in Milwaukee where he told all his guys, like, I'm going to go off tonight. And then he was 4 for 30. And, like we don't hear about those stories. There's so much, but it's not just Jordan. Bird we're guilty of that with Bird too. That like you hear a billion stories about how Larry Bird, calls a shot basically. And I don't know. I'm sure there were times that he said that and he kind of failed. And, but it's the same thing where it's like, Jordan said he was going to do all these things, and then he did all these things. Like, you know how many guys of that era were probably like, "I'm going to be the greatest ever," and had this drive to be the greatest ever, and didn't amount to shit because they just weren't. They weren't 6'6" and could fly through the air and palm a basketball like so easily, and just I don't know. Some of that's kind of funny to me because like I'm saying this because I want young me to hear these words. That young me would watch everything there is to watch about Michael Jordan and will watch Space Jam and all that stuff, and then I would go out in my yard and I'd be like, so if I just practice really hard, I can jump up and dunk that easily. Okay, I'm gonna practice, and then I try to dunk and I'm not even close. And yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell am I doing wrong?
I remember my uncle came over to my house and he played basketball, was great at basketball, played college basketball, and he was talking to us. He was like, "Yeah, if you just want to dunk, you just jump up there, then you just turn your hand over and throw it down." I was like, "Yeah, I would love that. That sounds great. That's not how it's gonna happen for me. I'm gonna have to learn how to use my left hand." Yeah, so that's I enjoyed the first two episodes of the doc. I think it's obviously focusing on the drama a little bit, but it is good for like you said, like we're seeing the immortalized version of the Jordan doc experience. We're getting it's kind of like when we watch the Bo Jackson doc. Everyone's like, you hear these stories and it becomes almost like these tall tales are
Yeah.
finally mapped out, and then everyone is amazed again, which is, I don't know, it's cool to be a part of that.
But the tall tales are born out of just amazement living through the era. And like I said, I
Hmm.
was I was only 11, so I was like younger, obviously, but 11 years old, you're old enough to remember
Yeah,
vividly,
for
and
sure.
I do. And the point I made, I did like a little reaction for Fox to put on Twitter after I saw it last night. And the quote that kept coming to my mind, Tate, was the Maya Angelou quote that says, "People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they will never forget how
How
you
you
made them
made them
feel."
feel. Yep.
Um, and that just kept popping in my head as I was watching the documentary, because Jordan, for all the, if you want to argue LeBron Jordan, the reason Jordan, the people who are pro Jordan just like lose their minds more so than the people that are pro LeBron, I would say, is because Jordan made them feel like nothing has ever made them feel, nothing will ever make you feel again, because just he came along at the perfect time. And I think this needs to be brought up too, is like, if Michael Jordan comes along 10 years earlier, maybe he doesn't have as big of an impact. If he comes along 10 years later, maybe he doesn't have as big of an impact. Like, coming along, peaking in the 1990s made the story that much more perfect, because it was at a time where, I mean, if you're thinking about like the history of the NBA, like there were other guys that came before him that were electrifying, like Dr. J and David Thompson and Pistol Pete in his own weird way. He wasn't a high flyer, but Pistol Pete was crazy, and Wilt Chamberlain. Um, but like the TV, the media machine hadn't caught up to them yet, to where they could put them all their highlights all over cable. And then Bird and Magic come along, grab everyone's attention. Everyone's like, "Oh, we should pay attention to the NBA," and perfectly set the stage for everyone to now turn to the NBA. Everyone's kind of paying attention. And then that's when Jordan comes along at just like the absolute perfect time. And it's a guy that no one has ever seen like this before, has a mindset paired with, as we said, the athletic ability. It just all is like a perfect storm. And for those of us that are old enough to remember it, it was just like it just felt like a religious experience. That's why Larry Bird called him God, because you're like, this is not possible. Like, we've been watching basketball our whole lives. We've never seen anything like this. And that's why, like, I honestly, I don't care if Jordan, or I think LeBron is probably slightly a better basketball player, but I will never argue that LeBron is the GOAT over Jordan, like, seriously, because the impact that Jordan had, the religious experience part of it all, will never be matched ever again, because it can't be, because you cannot put that lightning back in that bottle. And what Jordan meant to the people that lived through that era, I struggle to find the words, but that's the joy of the documentary to me, is like just tapping back into that nostalgia, reminding yourself of what it was like. uh I would say the '90s Bulls are the most famous, the most iconic professional stretch dynasty that's ever existed in American sports. And I don't know. So that's what I said. Like, the narrative of this is their last dance, and all this behind the scenes stuff. Like, it is fascinating, and it's interesting to hear everyone shitting on Jerry Krause, and this is Phil Jackson's last year, and Scottie's holding out, and all that stuff. But honestly, I'm just like plugged in, and excited about where this thing is going, just because I just want to watch footage of the '90s Bulls again. I just want to put myself back in like 10-year-old me, watching Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman and Phil Jackson, and just like how the magnitude that they had over American culture was something that will never ever be tapped into again, because it can't be, because like the way media has now progressed, that's what I said. It wasn't just that Jordan came along. Like, if he comes along earlier, media is not ready for him. If he comes along later, the monoculture, for lack of a better term, no longer exists, to where like people are, you know, it's too fragmented. Like, people who are if you're a fan of the Golden State Warriors, you now only watch the Warriors. You kind of don't really follow Jordan quite as closely as you would. But back in the 90s, everyone's plugged in. You're watching like every second that Michael Jordan is on your TV, every second that the Bulls are on your TV. It was a shared experience, and it's so cool to kind of have another run with this for these next 4 weeks to be able to share the experience with people again.
He's the man that believed he could fly, and he made other people believe that they could fly. And that was, like you said, the creativity behind
Yeah.
Michael Jordan's basketball. If you watch Michael Jordan play basketball, it's the reason I think that he is a better basketball player than anyone in the world, is because Michael Jordan, when he jumped in the air, did not know what he was going to do 9 times out of 10, but he knew that he was going to react to what you were doing and then make an adjustment and then make a basket and then go play defense better than anyone in the world.
Mm.
And that is what I respected about Michael Jordan. It's what I was a small little kid. And when you're a small little kid, when you jump
Mhm.
in the air, you have to make a lot of adjustments to make a layup, to make a shot, to fade away, whatever it may be. And that's what Michael did. And it made playground basketball fun. It made being a little guy fun. It made talking junk fun. It made believing that you could be the best player in the world. Like you said, when you were back in your backyard, everybody saw Michael Jordan and saw him deliver. And when Ahmad Rashad said in the documentary, when you knew that every single game that you watched Michael Jordan, he was going to deliver, and it wasn't
Mhm.
even like an arrogance about the delivery. He felt like he owed it to the people in the building to see it. He wanted you to see the show. He felt like he owed you the show, so he delivered the show and he played up to the show. And
Yeah.
that takes some sort of. A lot of people were talking about the debate, like we were talking about the GOAT debate, whatever. I don't care about any debate. Michael Jordan, the only debate you can say is he might not be human. He might be alien. He's like there's something.
That was
He's
a movie, Tate. That was fictional. Space Jam
yeah,
was fictional.
Space Jam might. I in fact, until I was like 8 years old, I thought it was a real movie, and I thought it actually had. I thought that's how he came back from baseball. I thought that he beat the Monstars, then he was like, all right, I'm back for the
You
Bulls.
think the Last Dance is the second best documentary about Jordan ever made? Space
Yeah,
Jam is the first
exactly.
best.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, this isn't even bringing up the good stuff. When is he going to talk to Bugs Bunny, man? Where the hell is he? Yeah, man,
Yeah.
it's a great talk to be a part of, like you said, and it's a great experience. And I think the cool part about all of it is that we have something to all, like you said, that monoculture or whatever word you want to use. That
Yeah.
it's hard to find that where we're all talking about one thing. So
I mean,
it's
that
a
should
blast.
be like, yeah, that's something that can't be lost in all of it though. Is like I can't I don't know. Like back in the 90s, man, if you said like I remember like growing up, if you met someone at school, like the new kid at school, and you're like, what are you into? And the kid said sports, you knew you could talk to him. You'd be like, sports, oh, cool. How do you feel about the New York Giants defense this year? And he would be able to talk about it because like that was like whatever the story was of the day. Basically, like we were all eating off the same menu. All the
Mhm,
sports fans ate off the same menu.
mhm.
And that is no longer the case. Now you could be at a cocktail party and someone would be like, I'm really into sports. And you're like, oh, no kidding. What do you think about Cole Anthony, the season he had? He wasn't as good, was he? And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I only watch
Mhm.
Liverpool. You're like, huh? What? I thought you were sports. He's like, well, I mean, I watch Liverpool and yeah, and I watch
Barcelona.
yeah, and the St. Louis Cardinals, and that's like really all I
Yeah.
watch. And you're like, huh? I thought but in the 90s, it was like we were all eating off the same menu, like kind of the sports schedule shifted together. And as the Bulls became bigger, I don't know, it was just like a shared experience. It was so cool. And I'm not saying Michael Jordan would not have been a star without that, but that part played into it. He was the perfect player at the perfect time. They had the perfect dynasty. It was just like an absolutely perfect story that just made, as you're living through it, you're like, oh my God, this is like a dream. This doesn't make any sense how all of this could happen and coalesce in this way that it has. So yeah, it's gonna be a ton of fun to watch the rest of the episodes. But no, I couldn't be more excited. Defend yourself though. Defend your boy with golfing with Danny Ainge. We forgot to touch on that. That's a
Uh,
hot topic. That if LeBron did that, if he golfed with someone and then lost a playoff series to that same person, he would be roasted for it. Tate,
Let
your
me just
thoughts?
say this. Michael Jordan is a mastermind of being able to get what he wants out of experiences. I think what he wanted out of that experience is one, for Danny Ainge to think that Michael Jordan is his friend. He is like, I will go out to the golf course with this guy. I will play golf with him. I will be bad. I will miss putts. I will laugh at his jokes. I want to know why the Celtics win. I want to
Mhm.
know what Red Auerbach knows. I want to know what they all know about winning championships. So I'll be buddy. I'll be chummy with him.
Okay.
Same with Charles Barkley. Did it 10 years later with Barkley. I'll be your best friend. I want to hang out with you. Why are the Suns so good? What's KJ's favorite move? What do you think KJ would do in an ISO play at the end of the game if he had to take a last second shot? Would he go left? He'd probably go left, right? Not that they actually talk about that, but these are the things that Jordan would do. He would get around, get in your mind, take your money. As Scottie Pippen said, he got golf clubs as a rookie, and it was just for MJ to take him to the golf course and take his money. This is what this band was thinking about 24/7. And Danny Ainge, I mean, I think Danny Ainge has got a lot of stories to share, and I think he likes sharing the stories. So I think Michael probably got a lot out of him, and I think that was a good decision for Michael Jordan. It's probably why he got 63 points off, other than the fact that he was playing 7 minutes a half,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous.
My two final thoughts. Number one, Dennis Rodman. What little we saw of him, I apparently episode 3 is a Rodman heavy episode because it's going to be
Rodman,
Bad
yeah.
Boys Pistons, and then it becomes like Rodman's your enemy, now he's your teammate, sort of that whole storyline. But Dennis Rodman, what little we've seen of him so far, they're doing the montage of guys introducing themselves. They say their name, like where they're from, all that kind of stuff. And Rodman sits down and he goes, "Dennis Rodman, what's up?" That's all he says.
Yeah. What are we doing? What are we doing here?
Yeah. Scottie Pippen's like, "Scottie Pippen, Hamburg, Arkansas, for a number 5 pick draft, like University of Central Arkansas." And Dennis Rodman's like, "Dennis Rodman, what's up?"
Dennis Rodman, you already know.
That was hilarious. Then the other part that was crazy to me was the Scottie Pippen contract stuff. They really just want to vilify the Bulls front office, and go for it. I don't care. I'm not defending the Bulls front office. I just find it like it's wild that Pippen signed the contract. He wasn't even really that underpaid for like the longest time. He only became underpaid because Jordan suddenly, in the snap of a finger, was making $30 million. But up until that point, like it was not really that big of a problem. And Pippen, his contract like wasn't really that egregious until like the final 2 years. But the way they did that story is though he was like some poor sap that got like suckered into signing a contract. He had no idea what the terms were, and poor pitiful him was wild to me too. I don't know.
I think if you're Scottie Pippen and it's 1994, 1995, and you're looking around and you're like, wait a second, I'm the best player on the Bulls, and I signed a deal in 1991, 4 years ago, and now I have no Michael. He's playing baseball, and I'm expected to take this team to the finals. Can I get paid? Like, what's going on here? And that seems like more of the opportune time to go to the front office when there is no Michael. But once Michael's back and Michael's yelling at you to sign and to rehab, it seems like it all just kind of came together.
Just poor timing. I don't know.
Yeah, poor timing. Yeah, Scottie was not working with that Jordan timing like you were talking about. He was like 2 years off.
Not to mention he ended up making like $110 million in his career. I don't know. The victimization of Scottie Pippen is they're laying it on a little too thick for me. But I get it. It makes for a good story to say he's the 6th highest player on the Bulls and whatever. But I guess I want to defend Pippen's agent because Pippen was pushing for the deal. It wasn't even that bad of a deal. It wasn't like 2 years into the deal, Pippen was severely underpaid by the rest of the league standards because like there just wasn't a ton of money. There became a ton of money because Michael Jordan
was
increased the TV rights. Yeah, and everyone was tuning in to see Michael Jordan. And then so everything exploded with the TV money, and Pippen really only lost out on money for like the last 2 or 3 years. So it wasn't really that bad. So, but I don't know. It makes for a good story. Any other thoughts?
Well, I was gonna say, and his agent, I think Jimmy Spencer is 100% like making a ton of money. I think he represents Nick Saban now. So if you're worried about his agent and his career, he's doing great. Other thoughts I have to say, it was great to see James Worthy in that documentary finally admit something that we've known for a long time, which is he was intimidated by the freshman Michael Jordan. I've never heard him really say that, but the fact that he said 2 weeks later that he was better than him, I don't really believe that.
I don't believe that for a second. Michael Jordan was not better than James Worthy.
I know Worthy was trying to ham it up for like the story of Michael Jordan, but James Worthy and Sam Perkins probably were better than Jordan, I think, on that team. Jimmy Black's probably more reliable on that team. But I like that Worthy. It was the first time I've seen Worthy, like, because his whole thing is I was the best player on the 82 team. Like, I know Mike went to shot, but like, shut up. So it was nice to see him kind of be like, all right, Michael.
But he also understands what's important with these documentaries is the way you get into the documentary is you give them the soundbite they want, which is something your boy Roy Williams absolutely mastered. Roy was not the MVP. That'd be taking it too far, but definitely the most efficient member of this documentary, most efficient person in this documentary, I guess we could say. Every time he came on, he had some absolute heaters. Congratulations to Roy Williams for that. Obviously, with scripting his lines, how many times do you think Roy like turned to the camera and was like, "Can we do that one again?" I thought of a better way to say that.
one take. It's Roy Williams.
Every time he talked, he kind of like I don't know. He never freaking turned it off. How many times did he deliver that line where he's like, "Should I emphasize freaking or off? Off? Freaking. Okay, well, we'll try it again. I'll emphasize freaking this time."
Yeah, Roy, please say frickin' as harshly as possible. I think that Roy Williams just wanted to remind people. I think in a world where when you do these history things, it's kind of like, you got it. Make sure you're giving your credit out to everybody that's doing the right thing and saying, like, even with the Paxson thing, it's like the Pacers game that Paxson hit the shot. It's like, make sure you guys remember John Paxson hit the shot to get him in the playoffs. But Roy Williams, his whole point of this documentary, and I think a lot of people forget this, is that basically Roy Williams was the one that went to bat for Michael Jordan with Dean Smith. And he was the one that got him into 5-star camp. He's the one that when he got to North Carolina, he was grooming him a little bit and working out with him. And he even told the story where Michael Jordan said he was going to be the best player to play here. And he was like, well, you're going to have to work pretty hard. And Jordan, like a psychopath, is like, I'm going to work harder than anybody ever. Yeah. It's like, all right, calm down, kids. Like, my God, like we're already good. Chill out. But I think that was, like you say, Roy's the MVP. It was because he wanted to, like, he had to insert himself because he's such a part of the story. But he's not doing it the Calipari way, which is my guy. And I saw this.
Yeah.
Let me tell the story. It's freaking amazing. This kid's freaking amazing.
For the best access, perspective, and personalities in all of sports, follow us at Fox Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.